Markelle Fultz has one of the most unique stories I've ever seen from a player. He was a 5-star recruit in high school and had an unbelievable freshman season at the University of Washington. Fultz played so good that he was the consensus #1 overall pick over Lonzo Ball and Jason Tatum, who at the time had a ton of hype themselves. However, just 7 seasons after getting drafted with that first overall pick, he's struggling to even find a roster spot. There is definitely still a chance he gets signed to a team, but with training camp coming up here soon, he most likely won't be getting a role that's very significant. Despite being only 26 years old, a lot of fans and teams are already prepared to move on from him. And it's not that hard to see why. A healthy Markelle Fultz is not a unanimous #1 overall pick type of player, but he is 100% someone that can make a pretty big impact on a team. A lot of people think that he's just a bad player, but when he's healthy, he's a very solid playmaker and can score a lot better than people give him credit for. Not to mention, he's also a really good defender and athlete in general. The only problem is that a healthy Markelle Fultz is not something you see very often. His biggest problem by far is obviously his availability. He's only had about 2 relatively healthy seasons, and not just that, he's had 4 different seasons where he's played less than 20 total games. This has been the case since the day he entered the league, and 7 years later he's dealing with the same stuff. And the thing that honestly makes it even worse is there wasn't like an obvious major common injury like an ACL tear or an Achilles tear that started this string of injuries. He actually did tear his ACL in 2021, but even that affected his career less than his shoulder problems that started from the very beginning. Fultz has come out multiple times and said that he's been dealing with thoracic outlet syndrome, which is basically when the nerves or blood vessels in your upper arm are being compressed. And when your job specifically requires you to have precise shoulder movements, things are not going to work out. People that have TOS say that playing basketball for them is almost impossible. Imagine trying to play basketball when your shoulder simply won't do what you're telling it to do. There's a lot of speculation of when the TOS really started to become an issue. He looked fine in college and looked fine in the summer league, but once the NBA season came around, he clearly had issues. There's a good amount of people that believe his shoulder problems came from a BMX or motorcycle type of incident. There's a lot of theories that people have come up with, but I'm just gonna go with what Fultz has come out and said. The BMX or motorcycle stuff could be true, I have no idea, but it's definitely a lingering shoulder injury either way. One thing a lot of people forget is that there were multiple reports of Fultz having bad pre-draft workouts that indicated things were not normal even back then. This didn't come from one source either, this came from the Sixers and Celtics reporters. A Sixers reporter literally tweeted saying that today's workout was about 80% medical reports, 18% interview, 1% performance, and 1% miscellaneous. But at the time, nobody knew what that was really all about. That was until everyone saw his new shooting mechanics. One of the biggest stories when he was on the Sixers was what in the world happened to Markelle Fultz's jump shot. He was clearly already suffering from TOS, but the fans, and possibly Fultz himself, didn't know it. The Sixers were constantly trying to change his shot and work around his busted shoulder, but all that did was make things worse. He only played 4 games his rookie season before missing the next 68, and even when he came back, he really wasn't even playing that much. The thing that gave people hope was the fact that in his last game of the season, he became the youngest player to record a triple-double, and he did it in just 25 minutes. Just when people thought they were out, he pulled them right back in. It was just a really weird rookie season for him, and the next year would almost be the exact same thing. He only played 19 games, averaging just over 20 minutes a night before missing the entire rest of the season. And when he was actually on the court, he wasn't the star player people were hoping he would be. The Sixers were looking to win as soon as possible, and in theory they had the tools to do it. They were just missing a couple pieces, and Fultz was supposed to be a big piece to the puzzle. But in the 2 seasons that he was with the Sixers, he only played 33 regular season games. They made it to the second round of the playoffs in both years and literally lost in 7 games to the eventual champions in the most devastating fashion ever.
Is this the dagger?
If there was ever a year the Sixers truly had a chance to win it all during the process days, it was that season. They were one of the most heartbreaking shots ever away from playing the Milwaukee Bucks in the conference championship. Markelle not playing wasn't the reason they lost, but he still could have helped. And that was like the healthiest team the Sixers ever had. Ben Simmons played the most games out of anyone on the team in both years Fultz was there. Imagine that. But on top of the pressure of being on a win-now team as a rookie, he has the pressure of trying to recover from something that doesn't really truly ever go away. Those two things alone destroyed him mentally on top of everything else that was going on. It was a perfect storm where everything that could go wrong went wrong. So from there, the team was ready to move on from him. Some people were already calling him a bust, while others were saying it was way too soon to even be moving on from him. The Sixers would then trade him to the Magic, in a trade that kind of worked out for both teams. Fultz would get a chance to figure everything out in a small market with less pressure, while the Sixers would get their now franchise point guard Tyrese Maxey with one of the picks. It wasn't until his first season with the Magic and his third season in the league before he would get a mostly healthy year. In 72 games, he averaged 12 points and 5 assists on the Vucevic and Evan Fournier-led Orlando Magic. Those aren't the numbers you would be hoping for coming from a guy that was just recently taken with the first overall pick, but the fact that he was consistently on the court was huge. He struggled to shoot the ball, but there were so many good things about his game that kinda made up for it. He was still in his early 20s. There was a strong belief from fans that he could still turn into something. But then, just 8 games into his 4th season, he tore his ACL. As soon as there was a ton of hope for him, that happened, which is just another major setback. He would not only miss the rest of his 4th season, but his injuries would cause him to play only 18 games in the very next season. Things were not looking good at all, and just when people thought they were out, he pulled them right back in. 2023 rolled around and he was right back to where he was. He played in 60 games and had the best season of his career. He averaged 14 points and 6 assists while providing good defense too. Fultz was able to become a really big piece to that young Magic team and was even able to knock down his mid-range shots pretty consistently. There was a stretch in the second half of the season where he looked the best he ever has. He missed the first 21 games of that season, but then played 58 straight without missing another one, which was huge for him. But the 2023-24 season would come around and he was significantly worse. It was clear the problem with his shoulder was back, and it was really negatively affecting everything he was doing on the court. He would only play 43 games all season, and his numbers would be cut in half. There were times where he just looked like a completely different player. His shooting obviously got a lot worse, and while his defense was still pretty good, it wasn't good enough to make up for his flaws offensively. Not to mention, the role Markelle played in was slowly shrinking. The Magic are now moving into a younger direction and preparing to become a win-now team. We saw this in the playoffs last year. And Fultz has essentially reached his ceiling. If he can stay healthy, he is a solid guard that should 100% be in the league. Right now, he's finding himself to be good, but not good enough to have the ball in his hands as much as he needs, and he doesn't provide you with a whole lot of anything off the ball. So that means whatever team he's on, he has to have shooters around him. The league has gotten to the point where if you can't shoot, then you can't play, especially for guards. Even the bigs are being forced to shoot. If you're over 6'8" and can even semi-knock down a 3, there's an 8-figure contract just waiting for you. But again, the biggest ability in sports is availability, and that's another major thing he lacks. I do think he will get picked up by a team at some point. He does still bring enough to the table. But you gotta respect him for constantly coming back after everything that's happened to him. And hopefully this isn't the last time we'll see of him. But let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on Markelle Fultz, and please leave a like on the video to support the channel. Also, subscribe if you're new for more basketball videos just like this one.